Hey there. Being a tech startup founder is quite an interesting journey. It's filled with ups and downs, and most importantly, it's filled with a lot of experiences that build you as a person, both personally and professionally. Here are the four biggest challenges that I face, and I believe any tech startup CEO faces in the role that we are in. The first one is scaling while remaining agile. Now, as you know, being a part of startups, resources are limited. The amount of opportunities and the time that you get is also limited, and hence the amount of work that needs to be done every single day is much high. And so the challenge remains that you need to scale your startup. Being in the startup space, especially VC funded startup space, you're expected to grow fast. And with that growth comes a lot of investment that may come in the form of financial investments, human resource investments, and also technological investments that come into the picture. So then the challenge becomes, how do you scale fast? How do you improve your product? How do you improve your business development goals? How do you improve your customer acquisition efforts and retention efforts, while at the same time being agile or being able to adapt, evolve, and change at a very fast pace? And I think that's one of the biggest challenges being a tech startup CEO, where you're building something that does not exist before, and hence there is no roadmap for it, there is no playbook, and there is a huge amount of risk involved. And hence the interesting challenge of scaling while remaining agile is perhaps, ironically, one of the biggest driving factors for CEOs to push themselves and the team ahead as a startup grows. The second challenge is attracting and retaining talent. Again, because of the nature of startups, it is highly risky, and the risk is taken not just by the founder or the founding team, it is also taken up by the early employees and even the employees who join in after as well, because their whole livelihood, their salaries, and their professional livelihood or their professional careers are heavily dependent on the success of the startup. And hence, there is a true balance between attracting people who have the appetite to take risks, and those people who are able to work in the face of uncertainty, who are able to work without being spoon fed, and who are able to learn and grow along with the founders. And having that right balance, plus having the ability to financially compensate them for the amount of work and risk that they take, is quite a hard um, decision to take. And hence, for startups, they typically suffer from the challenge of being able to attract and retain the right amount of talent. And because working in a startup is not everyone's cup of tea, it requires a very certain amount of mindset and skill set to be a good startup team member, and hence it gets very hard to do so, especially as a tech startup. The third is prioritizing innovation versus incremental change. When you build a product, especially something that does not exist before, you have a lot of ideas because you have spoken to a lot of customers. You have some expertise or some unique insight that translates to one or many features that you hope your product will have. In reality, like we have seen in a lot of high profile cases like the Human AI pin or Google Glasses, something that you hope that the customers want maybe is not the thing that the customers are looking for. And hence, in the strive to build as many innovative features and product types as you go along, you may sometimes lose sight of what the customers really want, which may range from something as simple and obvious all the way to something that you would have never imagined what the customers are actually willing to use and pay for. And hence, as a startup tech founder, it becomes a challenge to whether focus your resources and the resources of your company in building those small incremental changes based on the feedback that you get, or work on innovating projects that are completely out of the box, that do not exist on the world, and something that has the potential to either make or break the company. I believe the answer lies somewhere in the middle, where it's a balancing act between devoting enough resources to make sure that your product has those incremental changes, it solves all the errors that it has, and it is able to adapt quickly to what the customer says, while at the same time having a skunk works or a team that is specifically focused towards working on innovative new, let's call it, projects that has the potential for great impact, but is a risky venture nonetheless. So I think having that balance is pretty important as a tech startup. And finally, perhaps the biggest challenge for any startup CEO is raising capital, and that too at the right valuation. Fundraising is a almost a 24/7 task to be done. It never stops. You build connections with VCs, analysts, principals, managing directors. You try to convey what you're trying to build, and express the future that you have in mind, and hopefully translate that to what they're looking for. And once that basic step is done, the next discussion move towards company valuation, the financial aspects of it, agreements, terms, and so on. So there is a lot of ladders to be climbed, all the way beginning from building a personal connection, all the way to finalizing on the valuation, signing the documents, and transferring the funds. It's a long journey, and very few startups arguably have the ability to do that in any stage. But it is a challenge for tech startup as a startup CEO, because you imagine what more excites you the most is building the company, building the product, building the team. Fundraising is just one of those things which is necessary to ensure that your startup has the flexibility and the resources to continue innovating, continue trying out new things for acquiring customers, for growing the company, for growing the product, to build relationships, and so on. And so it's one of the, I wouldn't call it challenges, it's one of the opportunities. One other advantage of fundraising is that as you go out to fundraise, as you talk to VCs, as you pitch you and your company, you, in some cases, you get feedback that is highly helpful, especially from a third person's perspective who has good experience in the startup world. Some of the feedback that I've received from potential investors who have or have not invested in Xena has been quite eye-opening, because for that limited period of time, they have all their attention towards you. They're able to absorb everything that you're putting forward. And hence, in some cases, the feedback that you get during fundraising process is pretty amazing and unparalleled. So these are the main challenges faced by me, and I'm sure every other tech startup CEO out there.